Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Monotui, coach of the Tampa Bay Luxrays, and today I'm bringing you guys our GBA Season 7 semifinal match versus George, aka SceptileMC, coach of the San Francisco Arcaniners. If you have not done so already, please check out his YouTube link in the description below. He is one of the best draft format players, in my opinion. He was Season 5 runner-up, he was Season 6 champion, and he is now Season 7 semifinalist, and he's looking to push to the finals just like we are. So please, if you've not done so already, please check out his channel. He's a good friend of mine as well. I apologize in advance that there is no team builder for this video. I actually just picked up a new job and I'm working a few more hours than I'm used to, so I didn't really have enough time. However, I will be going over in depth a little bit of our team. So as you can see here, we have a specially defensive Rhydon with Earthquake, Ice Punch, Roar, and Stealth Rock. Very useful versus his team. His hazard removal is unlikely to be hazard removal. I don't think Mew is going to be Defog. I don't think Togekiss is going to be Defog. I think those are wasted move slots for his team, and I think he would agree. We have enough speed on our Rhydon to outspeed an uninvested Registeel by 1 point, which is going to be very nice. We can hit that thing with an Earthquake before he can hit me with an Iron Head or a Flash Cannon. Can get up rocks before he's able to get up rocks, which is going to be very nice. And it's also, this is a very good switch into things like its Togekiss, which are very big threats. It can deal with the Mew, potentially, depending on what it is. Can take one hit from the Garchomp and smack that thing with an Ice Punch. He also had some other things on his team that he didn't end up bringing that it would have been good for, but regardless, Rhydon's going to be very useful for this game. Rocks are very important as well. He does have that Togekiss, which is weak to it, as well as just being able to get chip damage on whatever he wants to switch in. Then we have a Choice Scarf Buzzball Jolly with enough speed to outspeed a max speed modest Scarfed Togekiss. That is just because Buzzwole hits his team very, very hard, and being Scarf, I'm going to force him to make predictions. Like, obviously, he can switch into Mew on a superpower, but he can't on a Leech Life. He can switch into Suicune on an Ice Punch, but not necessarily a superpower. Can switch into Togekiss on my Dual Stabs, but not on an Ice Punch. I think you guys get the point there. It's also a very, very good offensive check to his Registeel. That's going to be very useful. Then we have a Life Orb 4 attacks Greninja. It is the same set that I brought against him last time. It still puts in plenty of work for this team. Like, it's one of those Pokemon where even if he knows it's coming, there's not too much he can do to stop it other than bring like a specially defensive Suicune or a specially defensive Registeel, and even then Registeel doesn't do too much back to me. Suicune doesn't do too much back to me. I can hit them with very powerful Dark Pulses, Hydro Pumps, Grass Knots, etc. We also have Ice Beam on there as well for the Togekiss in order to do a lot of damage. Then we have a very similar Roserade set, very speedy, enough speed to outspeed a Togekiss, and then we have max HP and then a little bit of special attack, and then we have Sludge Bomb, Giga Drain, Spikes, and Synthesis. We are missing out on that Hidden Power Ground to hit things like the Drapion as well as the Registeel. However, this time he did not bring Drapion, which is very nice. He did end up bringing the Registeel. However, we do have things like Rhydon to deal with that, we have Buzzwole to deal with that, we have Salazzle to deal with that. Even it doesn't really want to switch in on Greninja's Life Orb Hydro Pumps. It doesn't, if it's not a Toxic variant or it's like not a Curse variant, Florges will actually be able to beat it 1v1 because I'm Fizz Death and Registeel is very weak, which is very, very nice because I am also Calm Mind, so I can set myself up, go for Hidden Power Grounds, and eventually I'll be able to 2 a KO him, which is very nice. Well, I guess I just spoiled the Florges set, but the Salazzle set is going to be Toxic Plate, 3 attacks, Encore. Encore is very nice in case he's a Calm Mind or a Sub Suicune. I can go for an attack on him, make maybe a ballsy prediction, go for another Sludge Bomb as he goes for a sub, click Encore, and now he's really weakened. I can hard switch into certain threats like the Togekiss. If he's going for something like a Nasty Plot, I can Encore him into that. If Garchomp's going for rocks, Encore him into that. Same thing with Registeel, for example. So that's very nice. Also, the coverage moves we have are Fire Blast, Sludge Bomb, and Hidden Power Ice. Pretty much all the coverage I needed for his team. Very nice for his team. It 2 KOs or OHKOs the majority of it, except for the Suicune as well as possibly the Mew, which is very nice. And then the Florges, which I touched on a little bit earlier, is going to be physically defensive, Moonblast, Calm Mind, Hidden Power Ground, and Synthesis. Same set as last time, but it didn't get to put in as much work as I would have liked. Not because it was a bad matchup, or not because it was a bad set, but because I had some of my other Pokemon do a lot of the work. And this set is still really good versus this team. Like, it can kind of take on the Garchomp, it can take on some variants of setup Mew, can take on the Togekiss relatively well, can switch into the Mienshao, and not be 2 KO'd by anything other than Life Orb Poison Jab, which is very nice. It, in most situations, beats a Calm Mind Suicune, because I have instant recovery and he does not. So unless he crits me before I am able to wear him down, then I will be able to beat him, which is very nice. And yeah, that is going to be the team. Obviously, as you can see on George's side, he decided to bring his Suicune, his Registeel, his Garchomp, his Mew, his Togekiss, and his Mienshao. Going into team building for his team, I was pretty sure he was going to bring the Togekiss this time around. It was a very big threat to my team the first time, but I'm not exactly sure why he decided to not bring it this time. I'm not kind of confused as to why he decided to not bring it that time, but he does have it here. And then he decided to bring the Registeel, which is a very scary Pokemon, as well as the Mienshao. Mienshao is also a very big threat. Scarf-High Jump Kick is something that's always scary. I do have my Florges, as well as a couple other fighting resists, including my Buzzwole, which can deal with it very well. However, Mienshao is just always a problem, and I have to be very, very careful of it. Regardless, that is going to be the team breakdown, so let us just hop into this game. We are going to hit play, and we are going to start off the GBA Season 7 Semifinals versus George, aka SceptileMC. Now, the first turn here is going to look very strange, and I'm going to explain exactly why it looks like this in a second. Basically, George and I ended up DCing very early on into this game, the first time we replayed it. So, I'm just going to kind of explain what happens here. Basically, he's going to go for Scald, he's going to weaken me to the point where I'm very, very low, and then I'm going to go into Roar. Now, I'm going to pause it real quick, I know it's very early, but just to explain what happened in the DC, and why we ended up doing this. Turn 1, it was Rhydon versus his Mew, and he went for Ice Beam with his Mew on the turn that I clicked Stealth Rocks. However, I was unable to get them up because he froze me with Ice Beam. I did about 40%, he froze me, I was unable to do anything. I stayed in, I hoped I would thaw to get up Rocks, because Rocks are very important versus team. But unfortunately, I stayed frozen, he hit me with another Ice Beam, did about 40% again. So we estimated that because he knew my spread based on the Ice Beam damage, and I was pretty sure I knew what his Suicune was, we decided, okay, Scald from Suicune is going to do similar amounts of damage, and I'm just going to go for Roars just so that I don't end up doing damage to anything on his team. How it worked out was his Mew was, after the second time that I didn't thaw, I decided to save my run on his fodder, switch out into my floor just to take the Ice Beam. It took it relatively well, and then I switched out again. Basically, if I roared him out into anything, I would just go out into Florges, as he would go out into his Mew, and then he would pull a switch. So all that would have changed is that he would have had a little bit more damage off on my Florges, but Ice Beam really did not do a lot to my Florges, and that's not really that big of a deal. However, I actually ended up roaring him out into Mew, which was perfect, because now he can just go for the Ice Beam, and we can recreate it pretty much exactly to the point where it was earlier, except for the fact that my Rhydon is no longer frozen, but that's okay because it's really low anyway, and it's not switching into anything regardless. So, as you can see here, the Ice Beam does very, very little damage to my Florges, and he is going to withdraw out into his Registeel, and I know he's going to do this, so I'm going to pull a switch out into my Salazzle. And you may be asking, well, Registeel can have Earthquake, and it can knock out your Salazzle. However, because I'm on the back foot, and he knows that he can live the Fire Blast, I want to get as much damage off onto this Registeel as possible, because now without Rocks, this game is going to be very difficult to win, but my Florges does put in a lot of work versus him, and if I'm able to get rid of the Registeel, then that Florges is just going to be able to destroy his team. I don't think he's going to be Crocoon, because I do have a Mantine to be immune to the Scald, which is his only attacking move if he is Crocoon, and things like that. So getting rid of Registeel and weakening Registeel is huge. So even though I did just sack a Pokemon to do it, the Registeel is weakened, and that's really big for me. I'm going to go for a superpower, hoping that he would want to stay in with his Registeel, as he is going to switch into his Togekiss. Based on the damage that superpower did, it reveals that this Togekiss is pretty much fully offensive. Like that is a quad resist, and that did quite a bit of damage, so it looks like he's not going to be very bulky. It looks like he's more than likely going to be a very speedy, offensive variant. And there really isn't much I can do other than just go out into my Rhydon on the Air Slash. As you can see here, that Air Slash actually only did, I believe, 19 damage. I was at 44, so it did 21 damage. So there's a very good chance I lived. No, I'm not going to get that roll in my favor. Remember, I was frozen prior to this situation, so I more than likely wouldn't have thought anyway. So you know, that's really not that big of a loss. I totally agree to everything that happened in that situation. Don't blame George. I totally agreed to it, and it was also partially my idea because he got the freeze, as unlikely as it is. That's what happened, and I was willing to replay that. Regardless, He's going to knock out my Rhydon. I'm then going to go out into Roserade. Knowing I'm going to force him out, I'm just going to go for a layer of spikes, trying to get chip damage on whatever wants to switch in. And then I'm just going to go right out into my Buzzwole, as he is going to go right for his Stealth Rock. And now I'm hoping he is going, because he knows he needs his Registeel in order to deal with my Florges, as well as some of the other threats on my team. I'm really hoping he's going to go out into Togekiss once again. So I'm going to go for the Ice Punch. Unfortunately, I get that prediction wrong, and he is going to take that very, very easily. And then he is just going to fire off an Aerial Ace. Because Registeel is very weak and Buzzwole is very bulky, this Aerial Ace is not going to do too much damage, despite the fact that it's 4 times super effective. However, no smart man goes for an Ice Punch, knowing he's locked into it on a Registeel that is very important, who can just keep firing off 4 times super effective attacks. However, I am no smart man, and we are able to smack this Garchomp with an Ice Punch. But we find out here that he is actually going to be Rough Skin Rocky Helmet. And we're at 69 HP, that's good. But what is not good is, after looking at his side, I was actually able to figure out that with Stealth Rocks up, which I would have gotten up without the freeze earlier on my Rhydon, it would have been able to do 12 HP of damage. He had enough HP to hit 204. 6% of 204 is 12, if I'm assuming I'm doing my math correctly, which I believe I am, because I double-checked this. And he is currently, after that Ice Punch, at 11 HP. Meaning that if he did not have the, if I was able to get Rocks up, my Buzzwole would be at this amount of HP. I would have been able to kill the Garchomp, and then I wouldn't have to go for another Ice Punch on the following turn, reveal that I'm Scarf, and taking a lot more Rough Skin Rocky Helmet damage. Now, I understand what some of you may be yelling at your computer screen right now, and what some of you are angrily typing in the comment section below, and that is going to be, well, you crit Chimpact, and he was gonna get rid of the Rocks versus you, and therefore you're not allowed to get Rocks up this game. How about you suck the fattest part of my dick? So now that we've gotten that out of the way, I'm just gonna continue this game. I'm going to go for another Ice Punch, because it's pretty much the best play I can do. I'm going to be able to get rid of this Garchomp. I don't have great switch-ins to it, really, so being able to get rid of it is really big. But again, that extra damage that he's going to get onto me is huge, because that means that I will no longer be able to switch this thing into Rocks. And because I don't have Hazard Removal, I basically just have to sack this Pokemon off. I don't think he's going to be set up Suicune. I don't think he'd go for it now because I have a Roserade, so I'm just going to go for Ice Punch to get a little bit of chip damage. He's going to go for the Ice Beam, like I said, expecting either that Roserade to come in or for me to just sack this thing off and go for something along the lines of a Superpower, or he probably knew I was Scarf at that point, so regardless, he just went for Ice Beam on the possible Roserade switch. I didn't want to risk damage on my Roserade, and Buzzwole was dead on re-entry anyway, so now I'm going to go out into my Roserade. And here I have a choice. I can go for another layer of spikes, or I can just go for a Giga Drain. I actually decided to go for a Giga Drain here in order to possibly get like a little bit of damage off onto an incoming Registeel. But as you're going to see here, he actually sends in his Mew, and that Giga Drain's not going to do too much damage. And obviously I can't stay in here because I am a, I'm a Poison type in front of a Psychic type and whatnot. So I'm going to go right out into my Greninja. He is going to go right for the Psychic. He has no reason to overpredict. And I'm going to go for Hydro Pump, but I'm going to miss. And that miss didn't really matter as much because, as I found out after the game, he was actually an Assault Vest Mew, so Hydro Pump wouldn't have knocked him out. It would have been nice to get the damage off onto him. I went for Hydro Pump over Dark Pulse, by the way, just in case he was Colbur Berry, because he didn't reveal an item at that point. Regardless, he was AV, either of which that I went for wouldn't have been able to knock him out. However, he can go out and do Scarf Me and Shao Click U-turn and get rid of my Greninja, so very quickly, my offensive threats are fading, but this game is not over. I do have my Combine Florges, and if I'm able to set that up, I can maybe pull out a victory, assuming I don't get flinched down by Florges, and assuming I can somehow beat the Registeel. So, I'm going to go out into my Roserade here. I'm going to go right for a Sludge Bomb, because I don't think he'd want to risk damage on his Registeel, and as you're going to see here, that's going to do quite a bit of damage, and he's going to go for the Air Slash. Because of my HP investment, he is not going to be able to knock me out, despite the fact that that is a stab offensive Air Slash. So, now, with his Togekiss weakened, I am also in a little bit of a better spot with my Florges in case he's like a Nasty Plot Togekiss, which he actually ended up being. So now I'm going to go for another Sludge Bomb as he is going to switch into his Registeel, and this is where having Hidden Power Ground would have been very useful for me, because as you're going to see here, he's going to have leftovers. My best thing to hit this thing with is going to be Giga Drain, and I really can't do much damage to this thing regardless, and I don't want to switch out because he could have Iron Head. As you're going to see here, he's actually going to reveal the curse. So he actually ended up being a curse variant. I was expecting him to not be that because he obviously showed Stealth Rocks earlier, and I was thinking it would be kind of weird in order for him to be Stealth Rocks as well as Curse at the same time. But this is a set that is going to basically be my undoing. I don't want to switch out into Florges because even though I know he doesn't have Iron Head at this point, my Florges is not at complete full health, and I'm going to be taking rocks. I'm going to be taking a +1 attack, and maybe I should have switched out into my Florges at some point because he wouldn't have done enough to me. But even then, like, Hidden Power Ground just does not do enough to Registeel, and I would need to Calm Mind up quite a bit in order for that to make a difference, and he can just keep cursing up in my face. I'm basically hoping for a complete miracle where I'm able to crit him a couple times in a row with Giga Drain, and then maybe put myself in a position to the point where maybe a Hidden Power Ground crit can knock him out. As unlikely as that is, I don't really see another situation out of this because I need my Florges healthy as well so that I can take on the Togekiss. Like, he was an ASCII plot Togekiss. I kind of expected that considering the fact that he was leftovers as well as fully offensive. So, like, I would need my Florges healthy enough to the point where I can set up a Calm Mind and he can set up a nasty plot, but I'm still in a decent position, assuming I don't flinch because Florges has a massive natural Split F anyway. If I'm too low, that amount of Split F that I have doesn't really matter. Regardless, here he's going to knock me out with the Aerial Ace, and then he's going to get some leftovers recovery. Like I said, Hidden Power Ground is just not going to knock out this Registeel. Even a crit Hidden Power Ground at this point is not going to knock out this Registeel. We are going to go for that, however, because it's our best play. He's at +3, 4, 5, whatever he's at. Hidden Power Ground's going to go off, not going to do too much. He's going to fire off an Earthquake. With the attack boosts that he has, he is going to do a ton of damage to me, and unless we're going to get a crit here, this game is 100% over. Even if I do get a crit here and I'm able to knock him out, he still has some ways to deal with a relatively weakened Florges, so Hidden Power Ground's going to go out. He's going to live, and then he is going to fire off an Aerial Ace, and that is going to be the game, and that is going to be the end of the season for GBA Season 7 Tampa Bay Luxrays. And let's talk about that game a little bit. So, we're going to pause it here. Obviously, like, the freeze that happened at the very beginning of turn 1 of the first battle, obviously that's not George's fault, and I knew as soon as it happened. Like, obviously it was frustrating for me that it happened, because that was really awful for me, but I know that's obviously kind of upsetting to George, because George is not the type of player who wants to win like that. George is not somebody who likes to win because he hacks at somebody and then he gets a victory. George really likes those intense hacksless games where two very good coaches can just go at it and the better coach ends up winning that day. And, you know, even, like, after the game, he was like, dude, I am so sorry. But, like, again, it's in absolutely no way his fault. He didn't magically hack into his game and be like, okay, freeze this turn. But regardless, that freeze was really big for me. Not only because rocks were important, but also a Rhydon at about 60%, which is where I was after the first Ice Beam, would have been very important versus his team, particularly in switching into the Togekiss. Even then, when you look at his team, he doesn't necessarily appreciate switching into it. Like, the only thing that happily switches into Rhydon on his team, keep in mind my set was Earthquake and Ice Punch, is going to be a Suicune. And even then, Suicune didn't have recovery, so it would be getting worn down. Plus I would have had Rocks up, plus later on I would have been able to get Spikes up, plus I do have my Roserade to switch into Suicune happily. At that point it was a very big, like, I outsped the Registeel, and because its best move to hit me was Earthquake, Registeel, Rhydon absolutely eats those, and it does quite a bit of damage with Earthquake. I believe because he was mostly physically defensive Garchomp, I could have taken an Earthquake from it, hit it with an Ice Punch, and things like that. Like I said, with Rocks up, the Buzzwole would have been able to one-shot the Garchomp instead of having to go for 2, and because he had Rocky Helmet Rough Skin, I would have not taken that unnecessary damage, forced him to make predictions around my Buzzwole a little bit later on. It would have been a whole different game. Obviously, I'm not saying that the game would have been in my favor. I think it would have been a very close, very good game. And I can't honestly say for sure whose side it would have been in. I think I prepped very, very well. I think I played pretty much to the best of my abilities. Obviously, that goes the same for George. He prepped very, very well. His team was built very well to actually take on my team. he built particularly strong checks to offensive threats of mine. Like for my Greninja, he had Suicune as well as Registeel to deal with it. He had Tank Chomp as well as a bulky Registeel. He had a very fat team, but a team that it can also hit very hard. Like Garchomp was fat, but it had Swords Dance and it can kind of break through my team. Togekiss was just naturally bulky, but it was fully offensive. Suicune was built bulky, but still Scald Ice Beam is good coverage for my team, and it hits it relatively hard aside from the Roserade, even though Ice Beam obviously hits it super effectively. Roserade can take it on pretty well. Mew, typical bulky offense, Mon, 4 attacks. Was able to deal out a lot of damage to my team with its coverage, but with the Assault Vest was able to take hits from my Greninja, my Salazzle, my Florges, my Roserade, taking advantage of the fact that I brought 4 special attackers. So, again, very, very well played by George, and if there's anybody that I have to lose to in the semifinals, then I'm very glad it's George, because he's a good friend of mine, he's a good guy, and I really hope he's able to go for back-to-back championships. So, regardless, thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. Thank you to everybody who supported the Luxrays throughout the entirety of this season. I'm definitely looking forward to next season. Next season we're going to come back strong, and we are hopefully going to make that run for the championship. But until then, thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the other content going up on the channel. We got some PPL stuff, maybe some lives, maybe some live streams. Regardless, thank you guys once again, and I will see you in the next game.